Now you're recording. Okay. So, here we are at the Pomphrey Cemetery Island. My cousin Karen's a merchant. Thanks for doing the great camera work. Come on, Karen. So, this would be the southern side of the island, and this would have been the southern side of the cemetery. This is the old line fence that they actually had separating. There's another fence on the other side which we're going to go to, but the fence was there delineating the where the cemetery was. So, watch your step. So we are now on the Pomphrey Cemetery itself, and it's actually quite alarming to see that they actually left open trenches when they would have been digging up the or reinterring the bodies, when the whole area, the whole island where most of the bodies would have been, they dug them up and they didn't refill the hole. So it's literally, there's trenches everywhere on this island where the bodies were dug up and the headstones were dug up and taken to their new destinations at the Pomphrey Cemetery and at River Deschutes. There's no way that I would have any idea where the individual headstones actually were, but you can actually still see that they were really close to the line here. And I believe the main road, this would have been coming up through, but this was the main road, I believe, right here. If you look at the aerial photographs, you can see that the road did come up through, and this was all cleared when they did this, and there's still, down here on the river, there's still a couple of bases of where the headstones would have been on top of, or an old cairn. But the bodies were down as far as here, like they were down into the river. So whenever they did the reinterment, the cemetery extended down here into the river. So there are probably still remains in this area down here. There is that base right there of either the base for a headstone, or it was some sort of memorial cairn for somebody, something. Hard to say for sure, but this would have been where the road would have come up from down there in the river. This is it's underwater, but the old road is down there in the trench in the deepest part, which actually made this the island. So anyways, when you start coming back up here, you can see the trenches even close to the shore. You can see the trenches even here where they were digging up bodies. And actually there's this big headstone here, or not headstone, but the base for a headstone that they would have poured the concrete right down into the earth, and you can actually see, if you can get closer into that, Karen, you can see where they dug right in front of that headstone. So you can see that I guess the headstones were placed, which is very typical, is east to west as a typical Christian burial. And so they dug up right in front of the headstones, or in front of this headstone, and that's why it's all trenched right here. So we're just going to keep walking around the perimeter of the island here. So right now we are walking on de-interned graves right here. This would have been where people were buried, and by the looks of it, there were quite a few burials right here. So we're just moving further in. I would say that the cemetery, just by the way that there's more trenching here too. So it looks like there were probably quite a few bodies or interments in this area of the island going down towards the river. Based on how the landscape is, that it looks like they literally dug up here like a lot. So there seems to have been a big concentration of remains in this area. And the point of the island to the north is to my left here. And you can see here, like we're literally right down in the trench. It's almost like they dug right down, and they took out whatever remains they could find, and they just left the holes, it looks like. And so this would have all been done in around 55 or 56. literally, they're so high where they dug down into the ground that you've got to climb out of it. It's funny because right now you are right down in where Karen's standing right now where the camera is. You're right down in where those graves would have been. Yeah, that's really, it's peculiar. And then you can kind of see the outline of the cemetery over here. You saw the fence? So the northern limit of the cemetery is right here. So here's where the extent of the cemetery went to, which you can see the old wire fence again on this side, on the north side. So that was the extent of the cemetery here. And you can see they literally just pushed up the ground. They pushed up the ground here and they pushed it back and they didn't fill it back in. They just took the bodies and the headstones and left it. It doesn't look like there was a lot here. Just there isn't as much trenching here. I am somewhat surprised because I don't know that this is definitely like from the 1945 aerial photograph. That there definitely was, it was cleared. I don't know if there were graves here, but again, it's hard to say. They may have worked from the very back of the graveyard, which was here, and then worked their way to the front, and maybe they did more leveling at the back when they first started as they were going towards the front, because it certainly seems like this is a little bit more level, and I would believe that towards the river would have been where the first graves would have been. So we know that it was a cemetery since at least 1833. And it was probably used before that, and the only reason we know about the 1833 date is because that was the earliest headstone that we have that is now at the new Pomphrey Cemetery in Upper Wicklow. So it's the extent of the graveyard here to the east is probably right here. So this would have been the older part. There's probably a lot of human remains left here at this portion of the cemetery. Of course they would be just deteriorate. There probably wouldn't be anything left to actually find, I doubt, but just where this is more likely the older part of the cemetery, or the oldest part of the cemetery. And then I think you see the trenching going back down towards the western side of the island. And I'm just looking for so you can see this is very level here. But over here again, when we're getting closer to the eastern limits of the southern portion of the island where the fence, we're going to come up to the fence here again soon on the other side. Right there. And again, you can see here's the fence on the southern side of the island, which extends all the way back. So here's the fence again. So this is the southern, we were just at the northern portion of the limits of the cemetery, and this was the southern border. And once again, you can tell that it is trenched, that it's rowed up here. You can see where there literally is a 1 to 2 foot decline down where the trees are here. And this is just the natural island over here. There would have been no disturbance down here because the cemetery did not go down to this part of the property. So, yeah, and like right here, like the massive trenches. They just left massive trenches when they took the bodies.
Maybe stand down in to show, because it's hard to tell on.
So literally, I don't know what you can see and what you can't see, but and you can see like it just the trenches just go. They're just long trenches, and they seem more dramatic towards the western side of the island. The eastern side of the island, where again there would have been burials, but they would have been the oldest part of the cemetery. The newer part of the cemetery was down here, so I suppose they were actually finding caskets that still would have been somewhat intact, because there is an obituary I found from '53 that they buried somebody here at that time. So the last name was Doak, and they were buried here in '53. So you know, it's hard to say, but I expect that these larger portions of these trenches are probably where they had to dig back further to be able to get the casket out and the body out. The rest of the bodies would have been, you know, in some sort of state of decomposition, that maybe they were only picking up bones or teeth or something along that lines, maybe putting them into boxes and then taking the headstone and moving them down. But it's funny because, well, not funny, but it's just when you look at it, you can kind of tell that it's certainly towards the front here where there's a lot more excavations down here. I don't know if you can come over towards me, Karen, but is this where, I guess it was kind of back to where we started, but we went down by the river and we went over there, but you can just definitely see like all the trenching. So these were all graves. It's that plain and simple, and it really looks like they almost pushed the dirt over to the side of the cemetery. They almost took the top layer off. So anyways, you can definitely see that you know, people have forgotten that this was over the cemetery. You can find the beer bottles and a little bit of trash, and there's a trash barrel out along the beach where our kayaks are. So what's the date today, Karen? Oh, today's
30th.
April 30th. April 30th, 2021. Yeah. So anyways, let's just take a little video just down here, going back towards the kayaks. You can see where the fence, so this was the line right here, and you can see where the road actually comes up on the old 1945. This is where the road, the access point was to the cemetery, going down to the old road. So when you turn around here, this was all cemetery going right back. It actually is a lot more level than I thought. But the cemetery did extend down into the river. It's funny because this concrete right here, which would have been a base for a headstone, which is in the water, is right on the fence line is right here. So I'm curious to know, I don't know, maybe this was more burials. I'm honestly, I'm not 100% sure where the road was coming up into the cemetery, but you know, it's pretty amazing that nobody has found a femur or some sort of trace of human
something
remains over the years, just because you can see where it's definitely, this is just sandy loam. It's not.
So you're not sure where the entrance would have been, where the road.
Again, because on that side there really wasn't anything over there. The road was down here in that trench right down there. The road came down from the south and then came down and it was down in here. So the road was right down in the valleys where the original road was, and then the road came from down there out in the middle of the river, coming back up towards us. So I would say that the road very likely was probably more on this side. It could have been right here. The only thing that makes me think that it may not have been is the fact that that headstone's there, so, or the base of the headstone is. So, you know, they've actually, I can see where they've picked off stones off it, there would have been headstone mounted on that at one point in time. And it is fairly level. There isn't a big decline in elevation here. So I imagine they just literally probably trenched here as well, took out whatever bodies were down at this lower part of the cemetery. So, yeah, that's the only one I see down in the water, but we had that other one, that was two. That was two. I've only seen two bases. Is that all you saw as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think that kind of gives you an idea of Pomphrey Cemetery Island. The other portion to the south here, like, once again, the limits of the cemetery were right here. This is the southern boundary. The wire fence is right here. So from here over to the point of the island was pretty much the cemetery. And then it dropped down into the St. John River, so yeah. Anyways, were you able to get like in relation where the campground is? Do you know where the bridge was, Karen? The bridge is way over there, wasn't it?
It's on the other side of the road.
On the other side of the road?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll show you when we go back through.
Yeah. Really interesting, I guess. So there's still probably a lot of people that are buried here. I'm sure they got most, but they certainly didn't get all of them. And there are still remains that remain here. And you know, there are remains here that are over 200 years old, so there wouldn't be much left. So anyways, I think we're gonna call that a day. Let's turn her off.